So hopefully we're
Great.
able
You ready for me to get started?
Go.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today. My name is Amy Maguire, and I am a principal with Shumaker Advisors. Shumaker Advisors is a public affairs and grassroots advocacy firm, as you all know, wholly owned by Shumaker Law. And I want to thank you very much for joining Doug and I today. I have about 25 years in profit and non-for-profit lobbying advocacy. I was with many nonprofits, including Johns Hopkins All Children's and other board service, as many of you all, I think all of you are. And today, what we're going to talk about is a joint venture of SAFE, not really formally in writing, but what Doug and I have put together with our two firms to offer mission organizations and mission-driven organizations, nonprofits, small business, an opportunity to grow, an opportunity to work better and be better. And that's what you're kind of going to see in what we have here today. I want this just to be an open dialogue. We have a few slides we'll run through. We'll be pretty brief. This started because I, like many of you, in serving on boards, saw a lot of gaps over the years. I used the scenario of I was on one board, the Boys and Girls Club, and I think for 4 years we went through a couple of CFOs. And so that gets costly and inefficient and ineffective for a business. So at the beginning of COVID, I called Doug and I said, nonprofits are going to get PPP money and then they're going to be out and we're going to be back where we were. And so many of our CEOs of nonprofits are so mission focused, sometimes they forget about the business side. So Doug and I started and took about a few weeks and got this together. And thanks to Doug and his amazing team, built a website for us. And we're here today to start talking to you. We had a great article in a local paper in Tampa Bay, and since then have received 4 or 5 interest calls. So we've kind of started the process and just really look forward to your thoughts today. And really, you're also our little test market somewhat. We'd love to hear some input on how we make it better. But having said that, I'd like to turn it over to Doug to introduce himself and get us started.
Hi everyone. My name is Doug Pace. I'm CEO of Stonehill. Stonehill is a strategy and innovation firm. Started it about 4 years ago after I had an exit from a large digital agency. Really wanted to focus on strategy and helping businesses drive revenue, but also drive bottom line. So we really work at the intersection of people, process, and technology. We use a methodology called design thinking, which you may be familiar with. It's kind of a human-centric methodology of how you drive a business. We also use a lot of business intelligence. We do a lot of data analysis for our clients. Our clients are global. One of our largest is FIS. They're a Fortune 100, but our clients range from FIS to melting pot restaurants, which you may know, fondue restaurant, Bowie State University out of Maryland, Florida Virtual Campus, which is the Florida Statewide Advisory Services, PODS, Oregon Tilth, Girl Scouts, Florida Aquarium, and many others. Amy, back to you.
Perfect. We'll go ahead and get started. We're just going to go through the deck, and Wendy can drive it for us. And looking at the second slide. There we go. This is just a little bit a repeat of what we've said, but looking at the nonprofits and other mission-driven organizations have a limit on the overhead. They need to present a compelling 990. COVID has seriously impacted many of their fundraising efforts. Some of the fundraising has been great, actually, for some of them over the last few months, but I think that we'll see a decline. We know that the economy is going to continue to change, and we are looking to the diverse and expansive levels that we can offer services. Keep going, Wendy. When we put this together, the next 2 slides just talk a little bit about the approach and some of what we can do, and that's everything from allowing organizations access to better business strategies, better culture building, human resources, back office accounting, auditing. Next slide, please. You can keep going. Want to get to So this is the main one that Doug and I are going to spend some time on. And if you look at different categories that we put them on, I'll have Doug talk about accounting and technology and some of his areas of focus that Stonehill delivers. And then I'll jump in on some of the branding and comms and funding.
So really, when we put everything together, we wanted to figure out how to help mission-driven organizations, and the best way that we could figure is obviously starting with people and driving down. So with people, with all the complexities of today, including COVID and many other things, as well as just running businesses, there is a lack of talent no matter which way you cut it. And one of our original discussions was, man, if you could really get super, senior CFO talent and maybe partner across a couple like-minded nonprofits or not-for-profits or mission-driven organizations, could you really start to elevate their situation? That partnership went further, and we said, well, maybe you could combine things like real estate, maybe you could combine things like back office help. And then we really took a look at our skill sets coming together of both of our firms, and we said, what could we offer? And really, that's what this slide represents. Obviously, back office is a chore for a lot of mission-driven organizations. Core accounting and budgeting and forward-looking financials. That's a piece of it. That's the accounting piece. I have a CPA on staff that does that, as well as much more analysis. Technology. That's another core piece of what we are doing combined. Trying to eliminate that overhead. Things like telecom. Many of our clients, when we just look at what they spend on telecom and software and things like that, that's a huge savings that we could start to bring together. Branding and comms, that's where this partnership really helps to come together. Obviously, the government relations, the public relations is really one of the core skill sets of Shumaker Advisors. And then we have some content marketing and obviously create websites and manage things like social media campaigns. Incubation. That's really building the organization from the ground up, or building different elements of the organization. Incubation could run from board recruiting. Who's on your board? How do we make that better? And how do we go recruit those individuals? And I think our combined expertise really allows for that. All the way through to things like M&A advisory. Obviously, we need to help the law firm when it gets to it, but what are the opportunities? What's the strategic purpose for any M&A? How could we grow the organization to overcome some of the short-term challenges and really look long-term? Funding, things like donor management, CRM, knowing who your donors, how do you touch them more? How do you segment your donors? One of our clients, Oregon Tilth, we did a full dissection of their strategy and their financials, and found that the majority of their revenue came from a small subset of donors. And we did not want to lose those donors, and we wanted to embrace them more than ever. And we started focusing on a couple more large donors, where they had, over the course of a year, started going and soliciting more of the smaller donors, but it really didn't make an impact. We've got them out of some difficulties just by changing their focus. And then obviously risk management is another part that I believe Shumaker plays a big part, is the legal advisory, management of the status, elements like that. But then, obviously the piece I already talked about with fractional executives. Amy?
Absolutely, thank you. That's a high-level summary. There's so much more detail, I think, throughout each one, and we're happy to go into more of that. But I think the overall, what we wanted you to know as our group is we have this experience between our firms, and I add the law side, Doug's team, and advisors. We also have a network of other individuals, and I'll come back to the finance. Certainly, many of us know CFOs who would prefer to be doing this on a contractual basis with a company than in-house. having seen firsthand at boards I've been on in nonprofit, that will save you tens and thousands of dollars if it's done right and done well. So I think some of that is important. We certainly do in all of our communities see a duplication of nonprofit work. Some of that gets very diluted, and certainly I don't think we're recommending that you want to lay off complete and people lose jobs, but I think as the needs continue to grow, and we've learned a lot through the last 3 months, and I think we're going to learn more about the way business functions at its best and its highest point throughout the next few months. And I think one example of that is how we can continue to use our networks and use our expertise to help nonprofits and to help board members. And too, you know, I think some of you may be like I am. You go to a board meeting and you see bad financials and you're really heated about it at the moment, and you probably immediately go in fix mode, and these are the things we can do to correct this, and then you leave and maybe we don't really think about it a lot more until the next board meeting. And so I think those patterns continue, and I think what we're trying to do is work with those organizations to help them figure out what those points of pain might be. We've developed a checklist. I'll talk a little bit about a process with you, and then we'd like to open it up to some questions. Our process is basically, as we have the initial call with individuals, and we've been doing this, our next step is a checklist of what are their areas of their business model. What does it look like today? What are some points that need to be improved? What are they worried about? Do they have strategy, 1 year, 3 year, 5 year? What do their financials look like? And again, we're not asking to share all the details if they don't want to, but for us to get a better handle on where the hurt is and where the growth opportunities might be. Who's their competition? Is it really competition, or is it duplicative services? Are there opportunities to have broader conversations? Other areas are board training, board development, governance, bylaws, just a lot of that you can see right now through the last 20 minutes, the collaboration among how we need our law partners present in some of these conversations too. So I'd like to, that's pretty high level. One more thing I want to add, and then I want to turn it back to Doug, and then we'd like to open it up to questions if we may, is from a pricing perspective, we're doing the checklist first, and we've had conversations about, you know, these nonprofits and mission-driven organizations paying a flat retainer, paying a monthly retainer, or could also be a percentage of the shared savings that are resulted from our work. So that's a little bit of what we've been having those conversations. And Doug, what else would you like to add? And then we can open it up to questions.
No, I mean, I think the easiest way to think of it is operations as a service. You know, through our, as Amy said, through our network and through our combined skill sets, I think we can pretty much help any organization grow their business and control their cost and really make it a great place to work. And then, you know, how we want to do that, obviously we want to help them. Some people want to do it under a basic fee, but then some people don't have that right now. And that's why we're doing the assessments. If there's opportunity to help them, we can look for the cost savings model, and we can base our fees on that.
And if you think about the and then I'll ask Wendy to open it up for questions, is if you look at a lot, some of these organizations may own a building or maybe leasing multiple things. That's certainly a great area of opportunity right now as you look around those that are leasing space and the costs that they come with. Wendy, I'll let you open it up for questions.
Yeah, I have unmuted all of the attendees, so if they'd like to ask questions, they can.
Julio must be playing his violin.
There aren't any written questions. Nobody has typed any as well, but they are all unmuted if anybody wants to ask one.
I'll ask a question, Julio. So how, if I does it depend on the client and what their needs are? They're going to be hourly. How would it be? how do you plan on starting, especially the nonprofits, the smaller nonprofits?
Hey, Erica, I think that I don't think all of us realize that you unmuted all of us. That's probably what's happening in the background. But my question to Amy and Doug is, what's kind of the first step in us introducing this to various nonprofits that way we may touch? And is there a, is it, hey, look at the website, or is it, here's the one-page glossy, or how do we facilitate that?
Great, thank you. I'll start and then we can, Doug, thanks for that question. I think the first goal would be, we'd be happy to share this PowerPoint. I think it does a nice level. We also have a link to the website, and then I'd love an introduction to Doug and I, at which point, if they're interested, we'd love to go through the talk sheet, the check them, and where their major areas of concern and need are.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I mean, definitely. I think the assessment, that checklist that we talked about, it will give us the ability to determine, if there's opportunity or if there's the ability to help them, and then what that looks like. And I think Amy and I are both committed to doing that for any nonprofit, just, as a pro bono type work. And then either they'll get something out of it just from going through that they'll know where to focus and improve. And or obviously we can look to other opportunities to work with them.
Thank you. So as a follow-up question, of those 6 buckets that you have on the screen, what would you say in your experience is probably the more prevalent material weakness or weaknesses that we might see out there out of those categories?
Go ahead, Doug.
It's a little bit of everywhere. Obviously I serve on some nonprofit boards, and we have a lot of nonprofit organizations as clients. Fundraising is a big challenge right now. There was an influx of fundraising for like the medical side, the healthcare side, but some of the other ones have been kind of left beside, some of the other mission-driven organizations. What we see a lot of times is doing some deep analysis of financials, because as board members, we don't always have the time to do the deep analysis, and the organizations don't always have level of to accomplish that analysis. Much like I talked about that Oregon Tilth client that I have, they're the largest certifier of organic foods in the country, and they're a not-for-profit. And they, just by doing some sophisticated analysis, we found a lot of opportunities. We have some other organizations where it was really just core operations. It was process and procedure. When we ask about standard operating procedures to accomplish their goal, or to do fundraising, or to bring on even board members, for recruiting board members, when we ask what they are, they don't even have it kind of written down and known across the organization. So if you really don't have your mission, your processes, and your financials aligned, and you have not done that analysis, it becomes very difficult, as you know, to run a business. Now, some marketing help, that's a little bit more or less. One thing that we are seeing, and Amy can talk better on this, grant writing. A lot of mission-driven organizations don't even know what's available.
Mm-hmm.
And government relations for that. Amy, that?
Right, absolutely. And to supplement what Doug said, one is that there's so much database management that goes with fundraising. So I don't know if you know, I'm a CFRE, so from Indiana University certification, and across the last 20 years, so many organizations are using basic Excel spreadsheets, a variety of other data management for students. And I think that day has gone. We have seen firsthand how millennials wanted to be involved in donating, and yet that is a whole pot of our population that are being nurtured. So that is one example. How do we really help an organization, no matter what their size, to understand the database and the ongoing outreach and to the non-donors, to move them on that spectrum to engage as a donor. The second piece is certainly what was mentioned, which is board recruitment. How many of you get a call every week from a nonprofit that either says, hey, can you put somebody on my board that would be interested? And then when we're not necessarily noise. I think that is part of it. Certainly the grants, I had 2 ask in a week of a nonprofit that contacted me saying, do you have anybody who can help us write grants? So those are the relationships that Doug and I pull in. And you think about a nonprofit getting $50,000 or $100,000 grant for a program, that's real. That is a way that we believe we can bring this to the table. I think I heard a question I couldn't understand. It was our first one regarding the pricing and the hourly. It was fuzzy to me, so I don't know if you all heard it or would be able to repeat that.
Yeah, that was the question. I don't know if I'm any clearer now, but yeah, that was the question. Is how are you pricing this for your nonprofit clients?
Did you hear it, Doug?
Yeah, so it's really just explain the model that we've kind of come up with to price it. And I think it's pretty simple. There's a couple, there's a couple different models, but they're all very simple. One, we said, okay, there's going to be a category of organization that just wants to pay a fee and they don't want to get any deeper than that. So we made that available. Where does it start? Starts around $5,000 a month and kind of goes up from there. But then we said, as part of this, we really want to help smaller organizations, and we really want to help mission-driven organizations get out on the other side. So that's where the other category comes in. And really, it's going to be a cost-sharing model. So if we can come in together and we can identify areas that we can save cost or bring other revenue opportunities, could be a grant, could be a partnership, could be whatever, then the model will be structured around the fees being a percentage of that. So that allows either small organizations or organizations that really don't have the cash flow right now to benefit. It gives them the ability to work with us if we see some opportunity. And obviously we need to go through the assessment to see that, but it's, that's what we've all agreed on, that we'll do that just pro bono because we want to help. Amy, you have anything to add to that? I mean, it's really
Perfect.
that simple.
Well said. Any other questions or thoughts? We'd love this audience to poke holes in it or be honest with us what you think areas could be added, or think you have some contacts that might be interested. And if you do, obviously, I think Doug and I's information is on this. We send it to everyone who signed up after the webinar. But any other questions anybody has, certainly feel free to email either of us if you think of something after. We are really excited about what this brings, not only to the community and how it in the end does make our community a lot stronger, but how it helps all of our both of our organizations. We think people
Amy,
are really.
One more question. Sorry to dominate the questions, but can you guys help a 501c3 that has a sister 501c6, or maybe the other way around, a C6 that has a C3 foundation, and help them navigate to make sure that they are, truly the C6 and the C3 has that line in the sand? Because a lot of times, as you know, you'll find crossover in directors, crossover in operational people, and they're putting on 2 different hats. And then you have the issues of 2 different funding sources, whether it be ones that are truly donating to it. So take Wells Fargo, B of A, that have two pockets or 2 buckets, 2 checkbooks of money. One is for charitable purposes, and one is for basically marketing and community development and those kind of things, and struggling through. So that's issue one is management and governance. The other is, working through the ask of asking essentially the same organization to give you money from two different buckets. And then you have essentially an internal conflict of interest as to who you're really asking for. Is it the 6 or the 3?
Absolutely. Doug, you go first. I've seen this more often than not.
Yeah, definitely, and obviously very familiar with it, what you're asking. You know, Amy's probably gonna have a slightly different answer to this, but that's why I think our two organizations work so well together. To me, it's all about process, procedure, and holding true to some delineated items, and that kind of goes back to what I said about making sure that everything's documented and that we have systematic audits to make sure that we're holding true to some of those those hard and fast rules. I've been involved with a couple organizations that have the same challenge, and sometimes they forget about what they can do out of some organizations versus others. So we have to be very distinct on drawing the lines, be it education or fundraising or actually operating in some cases. And I'm speaking high level because I don't want to get too far into some of the organizations to get them in trouble. But that's what we do a very good job with. Amy, how about yourself? How about your side?
I would simply add that I've seen the biggest challenge has been what you said, your last sentence there, is some just forget what guidelines you have under 501c3 versus 6, and it gets blurred real easily, I think, for maybe board members or maybe even for staff. Some of that comes back to training. Some of that becomes really part of the discussion, as Doug and I both have so much history in this, is building that culture of what do you want to be? So really deciding, it hurts to change your mission. It may hurt to change your vision. We may potentially be working with a client that's looking at a complete revamp of their mission, vision, and their purpose statement. And that is work that helps you answer the question of, am I really a C3? Am I C6? And what do I do after that? And then, I want to add another layer. It wasn't a question, but it's something that I really want to chat about, which is the social enterprising. Like, you look at great nonprofits nationwide that have done this, and this is experience I have in corporate sustainability work, is I'll use MetMen as an example. Metropolitan Ministries is a Tampa Bay company. They have several spin-off in the social enterprise. They have donation. And again, these aren't necessarily thriving right now because of the pandemic situation, but they also have a for-profit arm that is a catering company that does catering from 30 people to 300 people. So you look at an organization like that, and that's a second phase of this, and we kind of put it in branding and comms and in funding, but social enterprising and corporate philanthropy is a real piece of this. And while that wasn't your question, I wanted to tie that into the discussion of a 501c3/6, or maybe another arm. And certainly that forming is where we need our attorney's help in making sure we have all those T's crossed, I's dotted when you fill out that paperwork for a for-profit. Because I will tell you, my experience in nonprofits is they have to have help doing this, and that is through an external expert. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I'll just add one thing real quick as we're talking, it just sparked my mind. Depending on the size, one of the larger organizations that we worked with, we spent a lot of time creating a strategy map with individual initiatives on the strategy map, and it helped to put a KPI to the different sides of the organization, but also segment out some of them by design. And then when we layered the organizational design of the entity, we were really allowed to separate it out. So you really didn't have a lot of crossover. Obviously, that's with a little bit larger organization. That organization probably had about 75 employees in total, but it all changes depending on the size.
Doug mentioned the KPIs, and I personally believe there's no reason why nonprofits don't adopt similar understanding of KPIs and strategic direction. You see some shifting to that, and many CEOs are moving to that understanding. I think that's another area that we bring great strength when I was at Coca-Cola, obviously KPIs drove our business, but what I think we're able to apply there is how you apply those to nonprofits and to other smaller type organizations. They can be simple KPIs, but as long as they're measurable and tracked. Well, I want to thank everyone very much for taking time to join us. Doug, thank you so much for just your leadership in this. I'm looking forward to a lot more discussion. And Wendy and Raul, thank you all for organizing. If no one has any other questions, I think we can end the webinar, and then we will do follow-up. And please email us with anything. Doug and I are happy to jump on another call and meet any individual that you'd like us to. All right, I think, any other ones, Wendy, anybody else?
No other questions. A couple comments and people who are interested in the slide deck, which we plan to share, as well as the recording.
Great. All right. Thank
Thank
you
you,
all
Wendy.
very much. Thank you. Thanks, Wendy. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.